Hello, fellow neurodivergents, neurotypicals, and other humans alike. This is Kayla with Living with the Puzzle, and I am here today to talk about autism in girls and why it might be different and masking and such while I do my crafting for today because I sew and I crochet, I wood carve even. I have an online business at Kiwi's Oddity Designs. I'll have to put a link in the description for that, but hang with me while I do some cutting of a giant toothless dragon pattern while I discuss and chat about life on the spectrum as a girl. So, I was diagnosed when I was 5, and most females on the spectrum are diagnosed later in life because of masking and such. But my mom knew that something was, a little different about me early on. And it could have been nothing, but it was something. It was autism. Because as I got older, I had some little things developmentally and socially that were not up to speed with my neurotypical peers, such as, making proper conversation. I was a bit of a scripter for a little bit, though that got redirected. And I started learning not to do that. I would tell people to say what I wanted them to say after asking a question. Like, I would ask, oh, do you like this? And I would say, say yes. Kind of like Love on the Spectrum. I forget his name. Where that one boy says, oh, it's Dylan. And he says, please say yes, please say yes, please say no, please say no. After asking someone if they like or dislike something. And I kind of did that for a period of time when I was a toddler and in preschool. But that is something I learned to redirect. Some people don't, and that's okay. But as a girl on the spectrum, it can be harder to get a diagnosis because we usually go under the radar if we're high functioning enough, or just seen as, quirky, socially awkward, anxious, shy. I was very shy for a period of time when I was a little kid. I would hide behind my mom whenever one of her friends came around, or we would go out shopping or, whatever with her. Shout out to my poor Auntie Deb. But that was her name, Auntie Deb, because she was good friends with my mom and actually helped her a lot through her pregnancy with me by just being a supportive friend. And yeah, sorry, just cutting out the horns. But yeah, anyway, I was very shy, and I would just, outside of home, I would be very quiet, while at home, I was talking everybody's ear off. I was a chatterbox. So I guess you could say it was I had a little bit of a selective mutism, but not quite. One of my mom's friends, shout out to Miss Patty, who has a son on the spectrum, thought that I was non-speaking when I was little because I barely talked, so she thought I was in the infants and toddlers, stuff for people with autism, for the children to learn how to speak and stuff, but that was not the case. I was just really shy, and that was, how I coped. Excuse me. I would just hide behind my mom and not say much. This is also something that I, eventually got better with over time. I progressed. And, yeah, I'm able to talk to more people now. But then I had to be aware of, like, stranger danger and such. But anyway, going off on a tangent there for a bit with my ADHD, the point of that was, girls with autism are often just seen as, like, these shy, silly, quirky, little, cute beings, but in reality, it's because we have autism, we have a disability, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it doesn't go, it's not as diagnosed as autism in males. I mean, it was kind of like the early 2010s, probably, when I was, first diagnosed. So I was 5, so they didn't have a lot of resources back then. They had more than they did from, my parents' time, like the 80s and the 70s, 60s. But it still had a far way to go, and it still does. But autism in girls just wasn't diagnosed much back then. Hence why a lot of women with autism aren't diagnosed until they're in, like, their 20s, sometimes even their 40s. But, whatever the age, it's always good. It's never too late to get some sort of, help for it or understanding of yourself and your disability. It may be harder as an adult. Sorry, I'm just moving here. Gotta get more material out. But it's harder as an adult because the intervention comes when, in the individual's younger years, like the childhood. And once you're an adult, it's like, some people feel like, what's the point of getting a diagnosis? Well, sometimes it's just good to know what is, like, causing some of your struggles. And it can be like a release for some women, I've heard. Personally, for me, I've definitely gotten the comments like, oh, you don't seem autistic, or you're very bright. And yeah, that might be true. And it's a nice compliment, but at the same time, deep down, I'm holding in a storm in my mind. Like, I have high functioning autism, ADHD, anxiety. It is a storm of, mental, just like a mental mess sometimes. And, like, yeah, I mostly show the good on here, but I'm gonna also sometimes, say stuff about the bad, and that's just the reality of it. Like, autism is not always sunshine and happy days. There's hard days where, I'm having, stress about adult life. Yeah, I still live at home with my parents, and I'm happy with that because, I don't have a whole lot of responsibility yet, being only 21. I'm very lucky because some people my age already have to pay rent, insurance, everything. But sometimes I get stuck thinking about the future. As a woman on the autism spectrum, and it's just something that one day I'm gonna have to fully be completely independent. And a lot of women and men, anyone on the spectrum feel, may or may not, some might be stressed, but a lot of us that can like live on our own, we do feel this way because it's hard. Like, it's hard for neurotypicals, but it's especially hard for individuals on the autism spectrum, or, neurodivergent in general, let's just say that, to find their independence or, find what career suits them. Like, I've been in a few jobs, and currently I'm not working because it's been hard, like, finding a job. I've been applying online, which, is kind of hard because, they just see your application, they don't give you a chance, or they don't even look at your application. Sorry, I have to adjust this. But so anyway, they don't always look at your application online, or, you do the interview and you're just not the right fit. Like, I applied to work at a, like a garden and farm supply store in my area, or near my area, and I got an interview and everything from applying online, but I wasn't the one picked for the job, and it could be for many reasons, because I don't do well with the register, because, yeah, I know, people with autism are supposed to be good at math. It's a stereotype, but I'm not good at counting cash and change. Yeah, I just admitted that, and so what? But honestly, it's something I've struggled with pretty much my whole life, and I've found that other girls without autism, or just people in general, have, like, struggled with dyscalculia, which is, like dyslexia, kind of, just, I feel like not as severe because, or higher, not, I don't like to say severe, that's kind of not nice, but, it's on a lower, like, level, I should say. Like, it's not as hard, I guess, as, dyslexia, but dyscalculia is sort of like dyslexia, but with numbers instead of reading, because I was always able to read and speak and all that. I just struggled in other aspects of my life. But I don't do well with the register, and my last job was at this bakery in my area. I'm not going to name any of the names of these places because I don't want to be sued. But I sometimes used to have to count the till at the end of the day, and I told my boss that I struggled with that sort of thing. But, she would still tell me to, like, oh, are you almost done? Could you maybe speed it up, pick up the pace? Knowing that I had some, like, challenges with motor and coordination. So my normal job there was to, like, make the icing for the cupcakes and, do some cleaning up around the shop, like doing the dishes anytime there's dishes in the sink. And, I mean, it was an okay job for a while. I wasn't always happy there because, I had a boss that didn't really understand what it was like to have someone with autism in their shop, like, as an employee. There were volunteers from the local day program that, would come there. I used to work there too, but I'll get to that in a minute, why I quit that job as a DSP, and it was nothing to do with, that, but I'll get to that in a sec. But, she had, kids, or adults, I should say, from the day program that volunteered and did dishes there. But she wasn't the one showing them all the ropes, like, or helping them do their job. It was a job coach, so she hardly interacted with them aside from saying, good morning, good afternoon, hello, how are you doing, and stuff like that. So, she didn't have a lot of experience. Both of her daughters were neurotypical, autistic. At least I hope they would have been autistic. They were pretty nice. But yeah, I was working in a place where there wasn't a whole lot of understanding really at all. I mean, she somewhat cared enough, like, because she looked up my money struggles, or, like, number struggles. So, at least she somewhat cared about that. But I was let go from that job because, not because of that, but because, just certain things. I wasn't the right fit. She was saying the consistency of icing wasn't really what it should be. But I don't know why, I was let go from there. But that's the thing. Female autistic adults, I feel like, tend to have a harder time finding employment than male, but male have it hard too, I'll say that. But because, men are able to, like, usually lift things and stuff, they can get jobs, like, at places like, liquor stores where there's a lot of heavy lifting, as where women are less likely to be, hired for that, much less a woman with autism or whatever. But yeah, it's harder for people with autism to find employment, men or women. I know this is mainly a video about women and autism, but I'm just kind of going my own direction with it and just having a chat with y'all. And I hope that's okay. Please don't hate. But yeah, people with autism just have it a lot harder than neurotypicals. And neurotypicals may have their struggles, and I don't downplay anybody's struggles, but people on the spectrum just experience their struggles on, like, such a much more, like, sensitive level. Stupid camera. But we experience it on, like, a higher level somehow. Because of the wiring in our brain, we tend to, like, do things differently. And that's okay. But sometimes it's hard. Like, change is really hard, and that's another reason autism is hard, and that's another sign of autism in both female and male. But yeah, anyway, I think I should end the video on that note. I went off on a lot of tangents. I hope you guys liked it, and goodbye.